The discovery. The probe drifted through the emptiness like a mechanical ghost. For 3,000 years, it had wandered between stars, following ancient programming from a civilization that no longer remembered its purpose. The Corvani exploratory vessel Nexus Dawn detected the probe purely by chance, a tiny blip on their sensors as they surveyed the Outer Rim territories. Captain Zelak examined the readings with mild curiosity. The probe was primitive by galactic standards, its hull scarred by millennia of cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts. Yet something about its trajectory seemed deliberate, purposeful. "Commander, this thing has been traveling for over 3,000 years, reported Science Officer Vex, her crystalline features reflecting the blue glow of her instruments. "The propulsion system is incredibly basic, but it's maintained a precise course toward the galactic core." Zelak's tentacles twitched with interest. The Corvani were natural explorers, their empire built on the discovery and cataloging of lost civilizations. Finding ancient artifacts was their greatest pleasure, and this probe promised to be particularly intriguing. "Bring it aboard," Zelak ordered. "Let's see what secrets it carries." The probe was smaller than expected, roughly cylindrical and covered in strange markings that none of their translation protocols could identify. As they placed it in the analysis chamber, Vex noticed something unusual. "Captain, there's an active transmission device inside. It's been broadcasting continuously for the entire journey." "Broadcasting what?" "Unknown. The signal is incredibly weak, probably undetectable except at close range, but it's definitely active." Zelak studied the probe through the transparent aluminum barrier. "Can you decode the transmission?" Vex worked at her console for several minutes, her 6 arms moving in a complex dance across the controls. Gradually, static filled the chamber, and then, cutting through the noise like a blade, came a voice. It was unlike anything they had ever heard. The voice was deep, resonant, and carried an emotional weight that made even the hardened Corvani crew shift uncomfortably. The language was completely foreign, yet somehow the universal translators managed to process it. "This is humanity speaking to the void. We are the children of Earth, the world you burned. We are the survivors of the genocide you called justice. This message travels to bear witness to what you have done and to promise what is coming." The transmission continued, but the words that followed chilled everyone in the chamber. "You thought you erased us from existence. You scattered our ashes across the cosmos and celebrated your victory. But you made one mistake. You let some of us escape. We have wandered the dark spaces between stars for 3 millennia, growing stronger, learning, preparing. We have not forgotten. We have not forgiven. And now, we are coming home." The voice paused, and in that silence, the weight of 3,000 years seemed to press down on the ship. "This is humanity's final message to those who destroyed us. The price of genocide is not paid in a single generation. It compounds across centuries, growing like a cancer in the dark. When you hear this message, know that your time of reckoning has begun. We are the children of a murdered world, and we have become something you cannot imagine. The stars themselves will tremble when we return." The transmission ended with coordinates, a star system in the outer spiral arm that most galactic maps showed as empty space. But Vex's instruments told a different story. "Captain," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "these coordinates point to a dead system. According to our historical records, it was designated as Sector 007. Complete sterilization was carried out there approximately 3,000 years ago." Zelak's blood ran cold. Sector 007. Every child in the galaxy learned about it in school. It was the site of the Great Cleansing, when the United Species of the galaxy had joined together to eliminate a dangerous species that threatened the cosmic order. The species had called themselves humans, and their world had been called Earth. The official history taught that humans were aggressive, warlike, and impossible to negotiate with. They had spread across several star systems, claiming territory and resources without regard for the established galactic order. When diplomacy failed, The coalition of worlds had made the difficult decision to eliminate the threat permanently. It had been presented as a necessary evil, a surgical removal of a cancer before it could spread. The coalition had bombarded every human world with stellar-class weapons, turning planets into molten slag. The space stations had been destroyed, the colony ships hunted down and obliterated. It was meant to be complete, total, final. But now, 3,000 years later, a message from the dead was broadcasting across the galaxy. "Sir," Vex said quietly, "the probe is transmitting the message on all frequencies. It's being amplified by our own communication array. By bringing it aboard, we've turned our ship into a relay station." Zelak realized with growing horror that the message was no longer contained. Their ship's communication systems had picked up the signal and were now broadcasting it across the sector. Within hours, every vessel, every station, every world in range would hear humanity's final message. And they were not the only ones listening. The warning spreads. The message reached the Corvani homeworld first, transmitted by the Nexus Dawn before Captain Zelak could comprehend the implications. Within the crystalline spires of the capital city, the High Council received the broadcast with a mixture of confusion and growing alarm. Chancellor Mort, eldest of the Corvani leadership, had lived through the Great Cleansing. He remembered the debates, the careful planning, the unanimous decision to eliminate the human threat. As the ancient human voice filled the council chamber, his crystalline features darkened with remembered fear. "This is impossible," whispered Counselor Eves. "The humans were completely destroyed. Every world, every ship, every trace of their existence was eliminated." Mort's voice carried the weight of centuries. "We searched the debris fields for years. We catalogued every fragment of their civilization. There were no survivors." But even as he spoke, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The message was being received everywhere, amplified by some unknown mechanism that bypassed all attempts to block or filter it. On Thraxian battle cruisers, the words echoed through combat bridges. In the peaceful gardens of Zelani meditation centers, the ancient threat spoke from speakers that had never carried such dawn. Berkness, the Galactic Communication Network, designed to unite 1,000 species across millions of light-years, had become humanity's weapon. The message propagated through quantum relays faster than thought itself, reaching the furthest corners of known space within hours. On the military fortress world of Kramek Prime, General Hasek of the Thraxian Defense Force convened an emergency meeting. The Thraxians were the galaxy's premier warriors, their entire culture built around combat and conquest. They had been among the most vocal supporters of the human extermination, arguing that any species capable of matching Thraxian military prowess was too dangerous to exist. "How many ships did we lose during the cleansing?" Hasek demanded of his intelligence officer. "Approximately 400 vessels, sir. But that was acceptable losses for eliminating a threat of that magnitude." Hasek's mandibles clicked in agitation. "And we confirmed all human vessels were destroyed? Our sensors detected no escape craft. The stellar bombardment was total." But uncertainty gnawed at the general's mind. The humans had been surprisingly resourceful during the war. Their technology had been primitive by galactic standards, yet they had fought with a ferocity that shocked even the battle-hardened Thraxians. They had used tactics that no other species would consider, sacrificing entire fleets to land single devastating blows against superior forces. If any humans had escaped, if they had spent 3 millennia preparing for revenge. The thought made Hasek's warrior heart race with both fear and anticipation. Meanwhile, in the peaceful systems of the inner core, the message created panic of a different kind. The Zelani, a species dedicated to harmony and non-violence, had reluctantly supported the cleansing only after being convinced that humans represented an existential threat to galactic peace. Ambassador Seren addressed the Unified Worlds Assembly with words heavy with regret. "We participated in genocide believing it was necessary to preserve life. If we were wrong, if humans survived and have spent millennia growing stronger in the void between stars, then we face a reckoning beyond our comprehension. The assembly hall, normally filled with the gentle harmonics of diplomatic discourse, fell silent. Representatives from 100 species contemplated the same terrifying possibility. The message continued to spread, carried by trade routes and communication networks to every inhabited world. On frontier colonies, settlers huddled around emergency broadcasts. In the great cities of the core worlds, billions of beings watched their leaders struggle to explain the impossible. But it was in the archives of the Eternal Library on Proxima Centauri that the most disturbing discovery was made. Librarian Kes, a being whose crystalline form had stored memories for over 5,000 years, accessed the restricted files from the Great Cleansing period. What she found challenged everything the galaxy believed about the war. The official records spoke of human aggression, of unprovoked attacks on peaceful worlds, of a species too dangerous to coexist with galactic civilization, but buried in the classified files were different reports, accounts of human colonies that had tried to negotiate, of peace overtures that had been ignored, of civilian populations that had been targeted deliberately. The humans had not been the aggressors. They had been afraid, desperate, fighting for their survival against a galaxy that had already decided their fate. Kes transmitted her findings to the assembly, but her revelations only deepened the crisis. If humans had been innocent victims of genocide, their promised vengeance carried the weight of absolute moral authority. As the message continued to propagate across known space, other discoveries emerged. Long-range sensors detected anomalous readings in the deep space between galaxies, energy signatures that defied conventional physics. Scout ships reported finding ancient human artifacts in asteroid fields, devices that had somehow survived the purging fires. Most disturbing of all were the reports from the Outer Rim territories. Ships had gone missing along certain trade routes. Entire colonies had reported strange dreams, visions of humans walking among them. Some claimed to have seen vast shapes moving in the darkness between stars, vessels so large they could house entire civilizations. The galaxy began to understand that humanity's message was not just a threat from the past. It was an announcement of their return. In the deepest archives of the Coalition Military Command, General Tor accessed files that had been sealed for 3 millennia. The records showed something that had never been made public: the human evacuation fleets. During the final days of the cleansing, long-range sensors had detected massive vessels fleeing from human space. The Coalition had pursued them to the edge of the galaxy, but the ships had vanished into the void between star systems. The pursuing fleets had reported no debris, no confirmation of destruction. The Coalition had assumed the humans had died in the emptiness between galaxies. Now, 3,000 years later, that assumption proved catastrophically wrong. As reports of the expanding message reached every corner of civilized space, a single terrifying truth became clear. Humanity had not died in exile. They had been preparing. They had been growing. They had been coming home. And their message was not just a warning. It was a promise. The price of genocide was about to be paid in full.